What's happening? Appreciate you stopping your scrolling and go ahead and tap in with your boy. So this video, I'm going to go ahead and try to share the information that I've learned and what I'm going to try to implement into my studying strategies going forward as I study for these IT exams. And this video is for anybody that is struggling, finding it very overwhelming to study for the CCNA or for any IT exam. We're going to be going over how to make this stuff interesting. There's different ways we can do that, as well as best studying strategies and more upgraded studying strategies, because 9 times out of 10, however you're studying, pretty sure you learned that from grade school, if not from grade school, from college. But if you haven't updated your studying strategy or looked into, because studying is definitely a skill, this is something that can be developed, but if you're not working on constantly developing it, it's definitely one of them things, if you don't use it, you can lose it. So that's what I want to go over today, because that's what I'm going to be doing in my life as well. If you're not already subscribed, you already know, please definitely subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything. I'm trying to keep weekly videos, keep them uploaded for y'all, as far as just all the information I'm coming across in tech as I continue working my tech career as a network engineer. All right, to get started, do you even know what your learning style is? Did you know that there's different learning styles like audio, visual, and kinetic learning, and all this kind of stuff? If you do know your learning style, do you know how to optimize what works best for you and all of those kind of things? And that's one of the things that I wanted to discuss today, is that I didn't even realize that all of these different learning styles, I knew about them. I knew which one I was, that I was a visual learner and all of this other kind of stuff, and probably like aesthetic. But what I didn't know is that none of that really matters. It doesn't matter whether you're audio, visual, kinesthetic, because there is a new definition of studying, or just besides that old definition of studying, which is just learning to retain information. We have to renew our mind, because there's new science and research that shows and that can back all of this kind of stuff up, is that those ways of audio, visual, kinesthetic learning, yes, those are definitely ways that you learn, but that's not the only way you learn. And more often than not, if you go do your research, you'll find that what is really contributing to the learning is accessing the components of your memory that are going to offset forgetting. Because naturally, as human beings, we're all going to forget something. I think there's even a law of diminishing returns, right? You're going to peak when you're studying something. You're going to peak as far as much what you can learn, to where you start losing everything that you've learned, right? So to keep it going at a peak and to keep developing and to keep progressing, there's things that you can do. That's one of those things, is to offset the forgetting, because you're going to be forgetting a whole bunch of stuff because it's an overwhelming amount of information and all these kind of details. You forget in your everyday life. If you forget something to go to the store, there's ways that you can practice and develop this skill of accessing the components of your memory that offset forgetting, to where you'll be able to remember or retain information to be used at a later time whenever you see it fit. And that's hopefully what I'm going to be sharing today and getting through to y'all. Now that we've redefined what studying and learning is with that new definition of being able to access the components of your memory that offset forgetting, I want to dive a little bit deeper, or attempt to dive a little bit deeper, into what's happening with your physical body at a biological level when you're studying and when you're learning, to help that definition and to stay with that theme of what we're going to attempt to do to optimize our studying protocol and to upgrade our studying strategy and everything. And I just want to discuss, because this really helped me understand and really grasp what was going on, what was blocking me from studying, and what I can do to improve and what can help me. So I definitely want to share that with you. And before moving forward, definitely want to give credit where credit is due. All of this information can be found. I'll share a link to the video that I watched. It's from Dr. Andrew Huberman. Shout out to him. If y'all don't know who that is, he's super smart. Definitely go check out his channel. He's got a whole bunch on everything from fitness and everything to optimizing all kinds of stuff for that. So definitely check out the channel. And he's got all the research to back up everything. I'm just trying to share what I learned to hopefully help somebody else out, and maybe I break it down in a different kind of way And definitely, it's definitely shorter because that's going to be an hour and a half long video. I'm trying to get y'all out here 10, 15 minutes tops, you dig? So again, I want to start by explaining, after we redefine what that definition of learning is, and just start by explaining what's happening at a biological level. And what I learned is that it's called neuroplasticity, and that's just a term used in neuroscience, I believe. And neuroplasticity is nothing more, like the simple definition is that it's nothing more than your nervous system's response in result of an experience, right? So it's your nervous system's ability to change in response to an experience. So as an example, you have an experience where you study and you have a nervous system, which is made up of your brain and your spine and other things, but mainly your brain and your spine, right, for the sake of the video. So it's just your body's ability, to change in response to an experience. So that experience of studying, you're going to change your whole nervous system. And it's doing it through weakening and strengthening these neural connections that naturally exists within your brain. So that's all neuroplasticity is. It's just, again, it goes definitely deeper, but a simple way to think of what's happening is you're strengthening certain neural connections when you're learning, and you're weakening certain neural connections. These are just two forms of neuroplasticity. You have strengthening and weakening, and that's just for the sake of this video. There's definitely another form of it, but again, check out his video if you want the in-depth details. But just to summarize it and to just make it really pretty basic, neuroplasticity is just being the ability to strengthen and weaken these neural connections. Now, before we move forward, I do want to stress that whether you're strengthening or weakening the connections, those aren't good or bad. That doesn't equal that you're either getting smarter or that you're getting dumber because you're weakening the connections. No, these are just, again, just two simple forms of what neuroplasticity is. And a good example of when you need to weaken some neural connections in order to learn is when you're trying to learn motor skills as a baby. As a baby, you have all these neural connections, the way I understand it, in your brain, right? And if you ever see a baby, like a 9-month-old or whatever, if you've ever fed them or watched them eat, they're going to be putting the food everywhere, right? Because they have all these neural connections and they're trying to figure out the stuff. But as they begin to weaken certain neural connections and strengthen certain neural connections for the motor skill that they're learning, you'll see the development will start to get refined to where they're putting the food all over the face, to where those neural connections that were weakened, that put it over here on its face and everything like this, to where they are strengthened, and the other ones are weakened to where it's so refined, the movement of that motor skill, that the baby has learned and now it knows how to eat properly and everything. So that's the same thing that's happening when you're trying to learn subnetting, right? You're weakening certain connections or you're strengthening certain connections, but that's what's happening, is your body is going through a change. So when you're running into a roadblock and you don't understand it, you need to dive deep into that and embrace that block or whatever. Take a step back, take a breather, and keep going at it, because that is, your body is actually changing at a cellular level. All these neural connections and all of this kind of stuff is happening. And that's why you're having a block. You're going to end up getting it eventually, just like the baby ended up learning how to eat, just how you learned how to walk and everything. You're going to learn subnetting or whatever you're trying to study, just as long as you definitely continue on with the learning process of strengthening and weakening those neural connections. And then you're going to have neuroplasticity take place, which will change and everything as a result of your experience. So hopefully all of that made sense. All right, so boom, if you made it this far, I've talked about neuroplasticity, what's happening in the body and everything. I've talked about that there's ways that you can learn without having to do the audio, the visual and everything kind of learning. And what I mentioned is that the new way of learning is that you're going to be able to access the components of your memory that offset forgetting. So that's all nice and good to say, but how can we actually do that? So I want to try to demonstrate that right now with this technique. And hopefully this is what I'm going to be implementing in my studies, which I've already done after I thought about it, but I haven't done it to this extreme, and maybe you should try it out too. And maybe you have done it, but maybe not to this extreme, and it's probably helped. So as an example, what we'll do right now is just going to give you a pop quiz, right? So I talked about neuroplasticity. If you're paying attention, I told you that there was 2 different forms of neuroplasticity, at least for the sake of the video, that what I was going to talk about. So don't bash me in the comments if it's not the technical stuff. Again, I'm leaving the link in the description. Y'all go holla at Andrew Huberman if you want all the technical details about neuroplasticity. But for the pop quiz, I'll give you 3 seconds. What are the 2 forms of neuroplasticity? Go ahead. Okay, whether you knew the answer, which the answer was 2, I gave you 2 forms, which is strengthening neural connections or weakening neural connections, or whether you got the answer wrong, none of that is bad. So the whole point of doing this pop quiz is the technique, and the technique is known as periodic testing. So what you want to do and how you want to benefit from that is periodically test yourself on something. So for example, if you were watching this video and you wanted to learn about neuroplasticity, and I told you that there was 2 forms of it and you got the 2 forms right away, you don't really have to periodically test yourself on the 2 forms of neuroplasticity. But if you're one of the people that forgot it, that's something that alerts your body that there's something that you need to learn because you weren't able to remember it. And that's something that you could start doing periodic testing on. So don't take that you didn't get the answer as a negative thing. Even when you're studying, even though you don't get the right answer, that's a good thing, because again, that's when neuroplasticity is going to occur. You're going to have to the body's either going to have to strengthen some neural connections or going to have to weaken it to learn whatever thing that you're trying to learn. If it was something for STP that you couldn't get, that got stumped on about neuroplasticity, your body is going to get triggered to say, hey, this guy or girl is trying to, or whatever you want to be nowadays, whatever it is, this person is trying to make, or this human is trying to make something, right? They're trying to learn something. They're trying to make these connections, and they're trying to learn and retain this information. It's going to send a trigger. It's nothing different than when you crack a smile. If you crack a smile right now, boom, it's going to trigger your body at a subconscious level to release a chemical or a hormone, whatever, that dopamine hormone that makes you feel good. If it's not the dopamine hormone, you're getting that. Whatever hormone makes you feel good. Or if you frown, it's going to trigger that stress hormone, cortisol, to flow throughout your body because you're frowning, and that means that you're stressed out, and that means to bring all of that kind of stuff that comes out of your body when you're stressed out, all those feelings and all of those kind of emotions. It's the same thing that happens when you're faced with something challenging that you're trying to learn. It's triggering that brain for that neuroplasticity to occur. So to develop and overcome that, and to break down this goal into small tasks, one of your small tasks to develop your studying skill is to implement periodic testing. And what are you going to be periodically testing? You're going to be identifying where you got holes in your studies. Whatever lecture you're going to go over, you're going to just periodically test yourself. You can go open a Boson test exam, practice exam, or practice exam out of a textbook, or find a practice exam online on whatever subject. See what questions you're struggling on, and then whatever you're struggling on, just keep testing yourself 3 times a day. If it takes 5 times a day, if it's to know the root election process for root bridge election process for STP, test that on yourself 3 times a day. That way, periodically, you keep testing yourself, and that should help you develop and get more better results. Hopefully that helps, and hopefully, again, I'm making sense. The next kind of tools and techniques to use to upgrade your study strategy is focus and alertness, because neuroplasticity, for that to take place, it's going to require these 2 things. It's going to require focus, for you to focus on whatever you're trying to learn, right? That's going to trigger the body for neuroplasticity to occur. We talked about that. And alertness, right? You got to be alert whenever you're trying to study something. You can't be in there, you're sleepy, tired. So definitely for alertness, you want to, one of the techniques is just sleep. You just want to have more sleep, or do things that are going to make you more alert. Exercise before you sit down and study. Just make sure that you're very alert when you go to sit down and study. And then I've also talked about focus in one of my previous videos. I'll definitely leave a link somewhere for y'all to go ahead and check that out. But focus when you're studying. Another way to develop this focus, and what I talked about, is taking an active learning approach. You do not want to be still passively learning if you're trying to study for any kind of IT exam. This stuff is already dry and boring, and if you think you're just going to sit back and memorize a couple of protocols and port numbers, it's definitely not that kind of studying that you're going to need to pass this test. That passive where somebody sits there and has you memorize a whole bunch of stuff, yes, I'd say about 30% of the CCNA exam is going to be some memorization, like port numbers and different things like that. But 70% of that stuff is going to be intuitive. It's going to be stuff that's just built into you. Either you have it or you don't, because you're going to have to figure your way out through that. And the best way to develop that focus that you need for that neuroplasticity to take place is an active learning approach, meaning that you don't just sit there and watch a video. You're going to do the research for it, right? You're going to not just research one thing. You're going to get into the weeds with it, understand it inside and out. That's a more active learning approach. You're going to do your own labs and create your own labs. Don't go off of somebody else's lab. These are just examples of taking an active learning approach, because you have to do this to make this stuff become more interesting to you. Unless it's already interesting to you, hats off to you. But again, this stuff is so dry and boring. The people that are teaching it are even more dry and boring. Again, that's why I'm trying to get out there. I'm trying to make this stuff a little bit more lit for y'all, you know what I mean, to get more people excited about studying, because it is boring, and you're gonna have to force yourself to focus. I have to sit down myself when it's time to study and just remind myself, what is the goal? Why am I doing this? I'm trying to get the bag. I'm trying to, whatever the case may be, you're trying to get a house or a car, whatever. You have to remind yourself when you sit down, because everything in your body is going to tell you not to sit there and focus and to not study and everything. But again, you can develop this focus. And for the fellas, I'll give you a perfect example of how you can develop this focus. For example, if you meet a chick and she's down to go to the opera or whatever, or go to a museum or something, and you've over here been trying to finesse and say, you know, everything there is to know about the opera, or I've been to museums, this and that and the third. If you're trying to get with a chick or whatever, you're going to do all the research you need to do about the opera. You're going to be the most expert person. Scale of 1 to 10, you're going to be 10 out of 10. When it comes opera night, you're going to know everything about the opera. So you got to apply that same kind of energy and everything when it comes to your studying. You got to be, oh, I'm going to be 10 out of 10 at everything when you come on that CCNA exam, because you're gonna have to be 10 out of 10. There ain't gonna be no half-stepping when you get on that exam. You're gonna have to cover all the bases. And a way of doing that is developing that focus, telling yourself like, hey, this stuff might be dry and boring. Just like, hey, I don't wanna learn about the opera to get this girl or whatever the case may be. But I'm gonna sit down here and I'm gonna focus because that goal, I want it so badly. So hopefully, again, this stuff is making sense. If it is, appreciate y'all sticking around for this long. Definitely drop a or whatever. Leave me a comment and let me know if it's working for you, if all of this stuff is making sense. All right, finally, I'm just gonna leave you guys with a couple of practical things that you can implement and that I'm gonna implement into developing into my study habits and my routine, my study routine and everything like that. Again, let me know in the comments if you're going to develop one, and if you did develop one, if it works for you. If it's not working for you, let me know. But for this portion of it, I'm just going to explain some of the study habits from the most successful students when they did a study on that. Again, check out that Andrew Huberman for the exact study, how many people were surveyed and all of that kind of, if you want all of that, because you think it's whatever, people can skew study numbers and everything, whatever, but the study is great. I think it's cool. It's only helpful information, but again, I don't want to just be out here just being a talking head on the internet, just not saying anything and not having any evidence. Again, there's stuff that you could go research on his channel. But there's 3 different study habits that really stood out to me. I think there's a whole bunch more, but the 3 that really stood out to me, number 1 is get rid of all distractions. One of the things that I've done is I had detoxed my social media. I'm not getting on the book. I'm not getting on the gram to go do all of that kind of stuff. When I go to study, I'm a lock in on focus. All distractions have to be have to be eliminated. You have to be able to tell family and friends, hey, I'm studying from X amount of hours on this day and this day. You're gonna have to get rid of all distractions. If your family can't work with you, you're gonna have to find a way where they're gonna be able to work with you, or take the time until you're able to get into a schedule where you're able to get and eliminate all distractions. That means leaving the phone out the room. If you got to leave the phone out the room, or turning it off, definitely turning off all TVs, going to a library, whatever you have to do. You need to eliminate distractions, and you also need to schedule that time and block out that time. Next thing, definitely just like the first thing, you want to isolate yourself. Don't do no study groups and all of this other stuff. Although you can benefit from study groups in certain environments, when you're trying to really develop your studying skills, you do not need to be around anybody. You need to be isolated. Focus and alertness is how that neuroplasticity is going to take place. You can't be focused and alert when you're in a study group. There is a time and place for that, but not when you're trying to develop the skills. So make sure that you're isolating yourself as much as possible. There's no distractions around, and you're completely isolated from everybody. Again, that means you're gonna have to tell people, hey, this is the time for me. I can't do it. I have to sacrifice this time for myself to develop myself and my skills and everything like that. And last but not least, which is probably the thing that I wish I would have learned when I first started studying for CCNA exams or any kind of IT exams, is to teach someone else. This is when a study group is very good and very important. This is where you try to go teach subnetting. Since you learn subnetting, there's one thing to learn it and you're able to figure out subnetting questions. But what happens when somebody else has a subnetting question? You need to help them. You're going to have to do this in the real world. There's going to be people that you meet when you get in your career that say they have a CCNA, and they either did a brain dump, or however the case, they really didn't hone in on the skills and they didn't really study how you studied. So you're going to have to teach them as well. So prepare yourself to become a teacher of this stuff. That's what I'm trying to do right now, is share this information. I would have started a YouTube channel way long ago if I knew how valuable it is to share information. Again, it's not valuable in the sense that I'm going to be making money from YouTube. It's valuable in the sense that I develop my studying skills. I develop my knowledge, because I got to be way more knowledgeable. I don't got to be a 10 out of 10 when I'm teaching somebody stuff, but I got to be at least an 8 out of 10. And that requires more from me when I'm studying. It requires me to study in a different way. All right, guys, that wraps up this video. Again, thank you for staying around for so long. Definitely subscribe to the channel to make sure that you don't miss any of the videos. Let me know if you like this video. Definitely like it. I'm coming with more lab videos. I know you guys like the lab videos. I'm going to try to do a live. So if you're not going to subscribe, you're going to miss the live. We're going to be doing live labs. I'm going to build it out with y'all, and I'm going to get the chat going, seeing how we can just build a router on a stick, lab and packet tracer together. I'm going to just block out some time for y'all. Y'all block out some time for me. We grow together, learn together, and all that there. Hopefully y'all gained some value. If you did, show some love to your boy, and I will holler at y'all on that next video. Peace.